Welcome to the Notespire Music Artist Insight Podcast, giving you a unique insight into the music and ministries of independent Christian artists. Here's your host, Paul Gibbs.
Thank you very much, friends, and welcome to the Artist Insight. We got a great episode for you. First of all, I want to remind you guys that the Artist Insight, of course, is being broadcast on our radio station, WNSMDB, Notespire Radio, every Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday evenings at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. It's also on your favorite podcast site, so please go to iTunes, iHeartRadio, wherever. You can search Notespire and the Artist Insight podcast, and you will find it. And finally, we are, of course, on YouTube at Notespire Music TV. You can follow Notespire Music on Facebook and Instagram. Visit our website at notespiremusic.com. And if you got any questions, you want to, comments, complaints, rebuttals, whatever, info at notespiremusic.com. No, I'm just kidding. Just do the comments, okay, or the compliments or whatever. My guest tonight is Demaree. That is her artist name. She is joining us from the Nashville, Tennessee area. She's working on a debut EP. I've got a whole list here. She has toured with the show Wicked. She's been on Broadway. We're going to talk about all this stuff. She has been a soloist. She started being a soloist in church at like age 9. She's had the unique opportunity to voice some Disney characters, specifically princesses. We'll talk about that. She's a single mom. She has a nonprofit organization that she is heading up, and she's also working on a book. I'm out of breath. Demaree, welcome to the podcast. How you doing?
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for that intro.
Well, it's all from your website, so there we go. And first of all, I want to invite you listeners and viewers to check out Demaree. You may not be able to stay with us for the whole thing, but her we're going to spell it for you: Demaree. Demaree, and it's DemareeMusic.com. All right, I think that takes care of all the introduction stuff. So I want to ask you right off the bat: are you a native of Nashville, or did you kind of move there to be where the quote unquote action was?
So this is actually my second time living in Nashville. I'm not a native, but my family is here now. I grew up all over. It's a long answer, but I grew up in Indianapolis until I was 11 months old, New York City, Florida, California, then Nashville for Belmont University. And at that point, that's when my family moved to Nashville. Yep. And so they've been here since I moved out here in 2003, and they moved out in 2005. And then I moved back out to Los Angeles after graduation, and I lived there for 12 years until the pandemic hit. And then I moved back as close to my family as I could with my 2 kiddos by myself. So.
2 kids. Tell us about them.
Yes, I have a 10-year-old daughter and an 8-year-old son. And it's been really neat sharing this journey with them because obviously they just know me as mom. But they actually, they've been able to play some of my music for their classmates. Their teachers pulled up a special single that I'm sure we'll talk about later, and they got to share with their classmates, which was really fun. So I just thought it was really important for my kids to see me model, my dreams and have an identity outside of being their mom. But also, of course, they're my number one priority. And they've gotten to hop up on stage with me when I've led worship. Sometimes I'd have to have my son on my hip when I was leading worship or rehearsing. And so they've been a big part of music with me. So.
And at this age, you must know, are they starting to show some musical interest and talent as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
So both of my kids have really good pitch. I actually think my son has perfect pitch. He can just pick a note in the right key out of the air, which is really neat. And he's shown some interest in drums. He's really into older bands. He loves Huey Lewis and the News. And
Cool.
he really likes the classics. Anything with a really good guitar riff or a good, drum beat. And his musical style is very evident. He really gets passionate and wants to listen to songs over and over again. My daughter's a little bit more of a bookworm. I'll
Okay.
hear her beautiful little voice singing every once in a while, and I'll say, sing louder. I want to hear your beautiful voice, because she really is gifted. But it's not something that she's super passionate about. So it's so
Okay.
interesting to kind of see
Yeah.
how kids end up being their own person.
Yeah, that is so interesting. I mean, I've been a musician all my life. It seems like, well, since about 6 or 8 years old. Um, but my kids, not really. Yeah,
Yeah,
my daughter had some interest in it. In fact, she and I did she took voice lessons, dance lessons, and stuff. But and we actually recorded a few songs together
oh,
when she was in her teens and early 20s. But no, it's not her passion. But that's okay. But
yeah.
for you, your uh your kids, it sounds like it's good. It's definitely going to be an option for at least for your son.
I don't think we'll be able to keep him away from music. Yeah,
Hmm.
he just really loves it,
And
and
you're in a place where it's just
it's gonna be all around, hopefully.
right,
Yeah, they do have some really, even in the public schools, they have some really good enrichment programs and orchestra and things like that. So I'm hoping we
right.
can take advantage of that.
Sure,
But I
sure.
will say that at their age, at my son's age, I was already 100% sure that I wanted to perform as a
Oh,
living. When kids are like, I
okay.
want to be a doctor or a veterinarian, I was like, I want to sing.
Yeah,
So they're not showing that kind of passion, but I've just been here to say, hey, however I can support your dreams, I
yeah.
would love to, because um my daughter actually has like a very specific passion for the Amazon and the people of the Amazon. And so she
Interesting.
actually
Yeah.
supports an organization called Justice and Mercy International with her
Okay.
allowance money. And so I have no idea where that
Ooh,
came from. She
that's
just started telling me facts, and she would get books from the library. And I'm like, I really feel like that's from the Lord. And so I got her a little tour to see their offices, because they're based here in Nashville. And that's been really neat. So
hmm,
I'm winging it as a parent. I'm like, Lord, just lead me and guide me to, help grow their faith and their passions and their callings for you. And that's really
yeah.
what my mom did. And so
Okay.
I'm so thankful, that I had a mom like that who was supportive and was able
Yes.
to really, she told me from a very young age, that she felt that when I sang regular music, that I did touch people's lives, but she said there was nothing that compared. She said there was something about singing faith-based songs from the time
Right.
I was little, that my voice sounded different, my heart came through, and she could just tell there was a different passion
Hmm.
about it. And so
So your mom, dad, musical as well?
so interestingly enough, my mom, I think I've only seen her sing in public one time, and that was I made her do a Judd song with me at karaoke once. But
Which one?
we would sing in the car. Love can build a bridge, of
Okay.
course.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But we loved singing to, the Judd's greatest hits, and
Yeah.
so we would sing that in the car a lot. My mom loved to sing while she was cleaning and loved to sing in the car, but out in public, no, not so much. But
Okay.
no, she really, I would say she was responsible for, the influences in my life. She would play a lot of Motown and oldies, and she
Mm,
would play blues and jazz and classical. I mean, she really, for being just a country girl from Indiana, she really was well versed in music, and that was really important to her that we were as well.
yeah.
I actually didn't grow up with my dad in my life, but I
Okay.
know an interesting fact was they owned a printing press, and they actually made labels for music records
Oh,
back in the
sweet.
day, like for the Monkees and things like that. And so
Cool.
yeah, I think there probably was musical interest. I know there was a story of he and my brother doing barbershop quartet when my brother was younger, and I was just an itty bitty baby, and I would try to hum along, is how
Mm,
the story goes. So, as far as I know, he did get my brother involved in musical theater, and so he had interest in theater. And so then I grew up watching my brother do theater from infancy. And then as soon as I was old enough to talk, made it very clear to everyone around me that I wanted to be able to be on stage and sing and act. And, I
Yeah.
kind of got bitten by the bug really young. And so when I was 4, my brother went into production for the show Les Miserables on Broadway.
Okay.
And so he originated the role of Gavroche, which is the little street urchin boy in the show.
Oh, really?
And
Okay.
yeah, and he's on the
Cool.
cast album, so you can hear him.
Okay.
And so I was, by all the rehearsals, I was like an honorary cast member, but I was too young to audition for the show. And so it was for me as a little kid, it was a long 4 years before I finally got to audition myself for the show. And then I
Uh-huh.
got to play young Cosette on Broadway and make that
Oh,
dream come true. So
so
it was
those
really amazing. Yeah.
that's awesome. The seeds were planted early, like with so many people like yourself. The seeds planted early, and there's always been someone, whether it's a parent, sibling, friends, somebody who has come along and watered those seeds. And that's
Absolutely.
exactly what sounds like what's happened. What's happened with you? Um, is we just can't. I find so many that musicians that artists that really don't do much with it or haven't really they haven't had that watering process. They haven't had the people around them that have really supported them and doing it. So, but you have had that, and you're doing that for your kids. If that's whatever
Yeah,
path
I'm
they
like, oh
take.
man, I've learned, through the school of hard knocks in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
Let me give you all of this information that I've learned over the years and help
yeah,
you fast track.
yeah, yeah,
Um, but I definitely, I would say there were worship leaders and music directors and a few teachers throughout
yeah.
my life. But definitely my mom she was the constant in not
Mm,
letting me lose sight of what she felt God called me to do. And
yeah.
that can be really tough. The music industry is a hard place.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so lots and lots of rejections and redirections and, things that were not God's timing. And so,
Yeah.
it was easy to get frustrated, but she really always tried to point me back to, if you were to be successful in the world's eyes,
Hmm.
that's great, but this is about so much more. This is about
Yeah.
allowing God to use the gifts that He's given you,
Mm,
to touch other people's hearts and to help heal people. And that's where the joy comes in for me so much is,
amen.
not wasting any pain has been kind of the
Yeah.
season that I've been in for the last 8.5 years of
Right.
going through difficult times and then letting that come out through songwriting and music and hoping that can encourage other people.
Yeah. And I know that it will. So many people that I have talked to in interviews have said, well, I've been through this or I did this, this happened, whether it was maybe a bad decision that I made or a bad decision that someone else made, or just nobody seemed to make a decision. It just happened. But nevertheless, I don't feel like God can use me. I don't feel worthy. I don't, all the doors are closed for whatever reason. But yeah, so what you've been through, and we'll talk about that just a little bit here, definitely is needed, a needed encouragement for artists that may be, somewhere along the path that you have walked. Let's talk about. I want to talk about just real quick. Just touch on your musical, obviously, obviously vocal and writing, but guitar, piano, instruments. What do you? All of the above?
No, sadly, none.
No.
I did take guitar in
Okay.
college. I took some classical guitar and learned my basic chords.
Okay.
But I usually just make sure I'm in a room with other people. So I do write with my voice. I do write melodies with my voice on my
Okay.
voice
Yeah.
memos. And then I usually just get with someone who's stronger at guitar or piano than I am to
And you can
help
put
get
some
chords
chords to
too.
it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Awesome. I
because
have.
I would be very limited on chords if I just went on the ones that I know.
Yes,
And
I hear.
so
Okay. Right.
I would
Very.
love to get better. I did buy a piano this last year for my
Okay.
daughter and for myself. It's a really big goal. But music really is very mathematic,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so I have a form of dyslexia called dyscalculia. And so it's disordered numbers, patterns, and sequences. So it
Hmm.
actually makes it really difficult for me to keep track of musical notation.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I've had to rely pretty heavily on my ear. But that to me has been a blessing because I'm able to top line and I'm able to come up with melodies
Right. Right.
by ear, pretty quickly and, come up with variations of melodies. I
Hmm.
feel like I have a really good grasp of
Yeah.
music. It's just not on the more technical side. Music theory I left the classroom crying and it
Mm,
was just like, I can't, this is not, making
okay.
sense. So, it is, I think I've prayed for God to, heal that or, help me make up for that. But yeah, I love writing, but it usually just flows out some melody with lyric in a chorus, and then I build around it, is
Right.
typically how I write.
We talk a lot about collaboration, and not everybody has to collaborate, but we want to make sure that people don't miss the advantages to collaboration. And you are a perfect example of someone who, uh, well, for whatever reason, God has placed in you the wonderful gift of being able to get the melodies and things like that. But you're also you need to collaborate, don't you?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, and that's awesome. And it could be so much more when we combine our gifts, whatever they might be, with others. And it just opens up such a wonderful. I don't know. It's like taking the lid off when you collaborate with somebody. That's great.
And
Uh,
when you really feel that anointing in the room, like there
oh
are definitely
yeah.
times where people are just on the same wavelength and
Yep.
you're just like really feeling that anointing and you're like,
Yeah.
yes, this is working. Like we were meant to write together. I love that feeling.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, we've done some of that here and it just, yeah, awesome. So let's see. I got a whole list of things. I want to get to them all if we can. I'm going to save the famous duet here for a little bit, but let's go back and talk about what was it like to tour with, for example, with the musical Wicked, for example.
So
How did
I
that come
was
about? I mean, wow.
Yeah, so I did I toured with the Secret Garden after Les
Mm.
Miserables. I did that for almost 2 years,
Okay, that
and
came
that was
that came
when
first, right?
yep, that was
Yep.
when I was 10 and 11.
Hmm.
And then I went home and I was just a normal kid for a while, and then I really started missing theater again. So I was really active, I was leading worship in chapel for my, Christian school and
Yeah.
very involved with the worship team. And then I just really started missing theater again. And so I started auditioning and I got Big, the musical that was made after the movie with Tom Hanks. And
Oh,
so
okay.
I toured with that for, I guess it was 10 months in my 10th grade year. And
Mm.
so I was 15 and 16. And it was on that tour that I actually went through Nashville, Tennessee. And I really started wanting to pursue a solo career.
Mm.
But I never lost my love for musical theater. And so after, like I said, some rejections and redirections while I was at Belmont and I was supposed to record an album, that ended up falling through. I was a little discouraged with just the solo pursuit. And so I ended up back in LA. I was married right after college and moved out to LA. My ex-husband and I ran a photography and production company, and he was
Mm.
pursuing directing and filmmaking.
Okay.
And so there were some auditions coming through Los Angeles for Wicked the musical. And I just thought, I miss musical theater so much, and I know there's a role that I think would be right for me. Let me go and audition. And I didn't actually know the musical that well. Like my friends were all just really, really into it, knew every word. I had heard the album in my friend's car, and that was it. So they actually handed me the packet for Elphaba, the Green Witch, which I did not end up playing. And I didn't know the big song that she did. And
Really?
I
Okay.
think they were probably just like, who on earth doesn't know this song? Like, who is this girl who's auditioning for Wicked and doesn't know the main song? But it was really encouraging to me that they thought I could even sing that role, that they even gave me that sheet music. And
Yeah.
again, I don't read sheet music. And so I sight read a little bit, but not enough for the complicated song that Defying Gravity is. And so they said, well, come back to the next auditions. And so I think I ended up auditioning 4 times for Wicked. And
Really?
then,
Yeah.
yeah, and I didn't get cast. And then I ended up going to a photo shoot with my ex-husband in New York. And it happened to be the week that they were doing a Wicked workshop. So you could go and you could sing for the associate director of the show and do a workshop with her and get some feedback. And it was a class of about 20 people with a teacher named Robin Morse in New York City. And it was on my birthday, and I was like, oh, this is meant to be. We were supposed to actually be gone before the workshop. I think our photo shoot ended, and it was the next day. And so I said, can I stay? Can this be my birthday present? I really want to, give this my best, because I was almost 30 at the time, and I was like, we knew we wanted to maybe start a family. And so I was like, I have to give this one last shot. And so that workshop went really well. And then I think it was almost 6 months later that they contacted me, and I did have a talent agent at the time, and said, we want her to record an audition for the role of Nessa Rose, which is the Green Witch's younger sister who starts in a wheelchair and then becomes the Wicked Witch of the East. Sorry if you haven't seen the musical or the movie, spoiler alert. But I put myself on tape,
Yeah.
and it was actually a totally crazy story. I'll keep brief. His brother was in a motorcycle accident that almost took his life.
Oh.
So we were he's okay now, thankfully, but we were in the ICU, and I got a phone call from my agent, and he said, how's everything going at the hospital? And I said, we're, waiting on him to come out of surgery. And he said, well, are you sitting down? Because I have some news. And he said, you're the new Nessa Rose for the West Coast tour of Wicked, the musical. It was the big Emerald City tour. And I said, what do you mean? I didn't come in person, and I didn't do a callback audition. And he said, no, they'd already seen you in person at the workshop and the other auditions. And they just passed your video around to everybody that needed to see it. And the role is yours. And so, yeah, it was so bittersweet, but thankfully Brad did end up recovering.
Good.
And then I quickly had to go home and pack, and I hit the road and learned the role. And then because my ex's job was flexible, he was able to come out and visit me on tour. So I did that for 10 months, and then my biological clock started ticking, and I just really wanted to start a family. So I left the show, and about 9 months later, I had my daughter.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. What an experience, though.
Yeah. Yeah. It was really neat. We got to play some really neat cities. We opened the Smith Center for Performing Arts in Las Vegas. That we were the very first show in there.
Wow.
Which came with a pretty funny story. We had a lot of fog, dry ice in the show. And they hadn't tested out all of the fire alarms, and they were really sensitive. And so my friend came to see me in the show, and that night, all the alarms went off. It said, please leave the building. The whole audience is standing, and all the lights are up in the audience, and they're like figuring out what to do. And our stage manager is saying, like, just keep going. Just keep going. It's not a real fire. Just keep going. Like, keep the show going. But all the lights are on. So yeah, it was a really good time. We got to spend Hawaii, or Christmas in Hawaii. We got to play in Honolulu and Seattle, Salt Lake City. So some really fun cities, San Diego. So it was great. I really, really enjoyed that time. And honestly, I tell people it was more than just a role for me, because I had so much rejection with a solo career pursuit. And my success had really been as a child in musical theater and a teenager. And so to have God open that door for me when I was feeling really discouraged. It was really just, it felt like confirmation and just some validation from God that, he had been the one to put those desires in my heart, but I had I had to be reliant on when his timing was. And
That is timing.
well,
Exactly.
I mean, I keep
Exactly.
learning that lesson over and over again.
Yeah, we never completely learn that, do we? But
No.
we hopefully we get a little better at it each time. We have to have that patience and wait. But wow,
That
when God does
patience.
open a door, He opens it wide, doesn't He?
He absolutely has, yes.
Yeah, yeah. So the next, what's I got it, that you had voiced some Disney princesses. That is just phenomenal to me.
Yes.
Um,
So that was a huge
yeah,
lifelong dream, and it was in a small
yeah.
capacity. But yeah, I got to voice Belle, Cinderella, and Elsa for Disney Japan. So it
Okay,
got to play throughout their park and for a
okay,
product that they had that I think I'm not allowed to say, but they
okay.
had a product that the songs would play through and you could hear each princess and you could choose it as the product it would play.
I see. Okay, I was
So
wondering about that. How did that come about, and what was the result of that? Okay,
yeah, that was just through a friend who knew I was a singer in Los Angeles, and they knew I
yeah.
had a musical theater background, and they said, you know, she kind of sounds like a princess. And I was
That.
like, that is my dream.
Oh
I'm
wow.
there. I'll do it, you know. And
Yeah.
it was just one long recording session for all those princesses,
Okay. Yeah. And then
and
they used that in the various products, whatever.
yeah, so
Okay.
that was it was really neat.
That's
Yeah.
cool. That's cool. Did I see that you did Ariel too?
Yes, so
Okay.
I forgot about that. How could I forget? That's one of my favorites, and I'm a huge fan of Jodie Benson. So
Okay.
I do. I will pull that out as a little impressive card. You know, my daughter said something about Ariel. I couldn't remember what it was, and I said, "Do you remember I did Ariel's voice, right?" And she's like, "No, I forgot." And I said, "Yeah, listen."
How
And
could you forget?
it's a much more like up tempo Ariel. It is part of your
Okay.
world, but it's a little more almost, I wouldn't say techno, but it's like really upbeat. So it's really
Okay. Yeah.
fun.
Yeah. I remember when that I'm aging myself here, but my daughter, I remember going to going to see the Little Mermaid, and wow, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I mean, we're talking VHS now,
Uh-huh.
so
Oh yeah.
how many times we watched that? Oh, the music was great. Oh my goodness, yeah. So, all right, let's talk a little about your let me see your first single was
Meet
what?
me in this place.
Meet Me in This Place. Okay, and I know we have that on Notespire Radio. Um, so tell us about how that song came about, and then there's a follow-up song too. Is that
There
right?
is,
Yeah.
yes. So Meet Me in This Place was actually, I was sitting on my couch, I was journaling, and it was just prayer time. It was I think about a year into my divorce, and
Mm-hmm.
I had little kids, and I really didn't know how to pray at that moment. I mean, I
Yeah.
was still praying and I
Yeah.
was reading my devotional, but I honestly didn't even know what to pray for at that point. There was a custody battle, and it was a devastating time. And so I was drenched in the Psalms, and I just remember that word coming out, you know, not to don't hide your face from me. And I felt in
Mm.
that moment that I didn't see what God was doing. I didn't understand what he was doing or why he had allowed those things to happen.
Mm.
And so that was my prayer. I just said, you know, meet me in this place. Don't hide your face. And like we said about patience, I felt like I kept having to learn these difficult lessons. And I just said, God, I'm so tired of growing. I'm so tired of having to learn these lessons. I just want to be okay. And so that's where the next lyric came in. I know that I'm growing, but tired of hoping it will be okay.
Mm.
And so that's it. That's all I had to start. And I had a little melody in mind and I put it in my voice memo. And my friend across the street, she was sorry, not across the street. I was in an apartment. She was across the hallway, and she was
Yep.
a young mom with three kids.
Mm.
And she was a teacher full time, but somehow she was still fitting music in. And she was going and she was playing at Hotel Cafe and different places around Los Angeles. And I just said, man, I don't know how you make time for everything, but I love that you're doing that. I love that you're prioritizing
Mm.
yourself because it fills you up and you can be, an even better mom for your kids because you have a life.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
she said, yeah, well, I go to this spot called Epiphany Space in Los Angeles. It's just a
Hmm.
really casual writer's night. She's like, if you have any journal pages or anything, if you ever want to come with me and just share, I think you'd really like it. And so I did one night. And I didn't even know if I was going to share because I hadn't been really, I wasn't well versed in writing songs. I had maybe written two that I'd let anybody hear. The rest were all lost on the little tiny recorder tapes back in the day.
I
And
remember
then,
those.
and then voice memos.
Yep.
So she was really encouraging. She said, no, just share. I think the start of what you have is something people can relate to. And so I
Hmm.
shared that chorus and those lyrics. And people went around a circle and it was only maybe about 8 people and they said, oh my gosh, I relate to not wanting to have to grow and just wanting to be okay so much. Like that's the
Mm.
line that stuck out to them. And they said, you really need to keep going with this. You need to finish this song. Like this is
Yeah.
going to affect people. And so I actually put it aside. I had tried putting some chords to it with one girl and it just wasn't meshing and I just didn't feel peace about it.
Right.
And so I just put it on a shelf, got really wrapped up in my full-time job and my toddler and my, preschooler and there was no time for music. And then the pandemic hit and I was on my own with my kids there and I didn't have any family support and
Hmm.
I actually didn't move to Nashville for music the second time. I just moved for survival and to be
Okay.
close to my family.
Yeah.
But I reconnected with a friend named Laura Vance Hackman when I got back to Nashville and just said, hey, I'm back in Nashville, looking to connect with old friends, just
Hmm.
to have community. When you're done with, being in your bubble, I'd love to say hi, even if it's
Yeah.
with masks
Okay.
or, whatever. Like no one was
Right.
seeing anybody at the time.
Yeah. Right.
And
Right.
so we actually no, we didn't get together in person. We did it over Zoom.
I
So
was wondering,
she
did so many people were doing things over Zoom or whatever and connecting? So
Yep. So we finished Meet Me in This Place over Zoom, and she just has
yeah.
a really amazing ability to like get right to the heart of the song. And what I love about her is she doesn't take the melody that I come with and like totally change it. Because I've had that happen before too, where someone just
Okay.
tosses it out and then they're like,
Right.
nah, this is better. And sometimes it is. But if I feel like God's really put a melody and a lyric on my heart, I usually want to honor that and
You want
build
to be
around it.
as close as you can, right? Yes.
Yeah, and so that's what we did, and we finished it, and I was like, yeah, this is the prayer of my heart, and I really hope that other people can benefit from sometimes
Mm.
not even having the words, but just being in a sad or difficult place, just saying, I need you to meet me here, whatever that place
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
God
Right.
can meet you.
Right. I love that, and I know that if they're not already, our listeners are should be looking up this song if they have not heard it. Meet Me in This Place. Now that we know the backstory, and that's why I wanted to have you talk about it because now, excuse me, now knowing the backstory makes it all that much more meaningful. And like you said, that people could be touched by it and encouraged. I and kind of coming from a similar background myself, I can kind of say, yeah, God, I want to be okay where I am. I know there's a process. There's a tunnel, and maybe some of you guys listening and viewing can relate to this. You find yourself in a tunnel, and yeah, you might try to believe that there's a light at the end of it, or that there's an end to the tunnel. But I'll tell you, when I was there, it was like, yeah, I believe there probably is an end to this tunnel, but man, I have no idea how long I'm going to be in it.
Yeah.
And I I can relate to what you said, Demaree, because you just want to be, I want to be okay until I get there. I don't want to have to do all this emotional suffering and trauma and all this other stuff. I'd like to kind of be okay on the journey. Is that it? Is that
Yeah,
Yeah.
I said, Lord, I think I've had enough of the refiner's fire. Like, am I gold yet? Because
Yeah.
like, I feel like I have all these impurities that
Oh,
just keep getting squeezed out in the fire, and
yeah.
I just need a moment of like, I can take a
Right. Oh, I like that.
But
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
was, he was teaching, God was teaching me so much through the process. And
Yeah.
I think I resented people sometimes when they would say at some point I might actually even be thankful for the journey and the pain.
Hmm.
When you're in the thick of it, that's really hard to hear.
Yeah, it
But I
is.
do
Yeah.
look back and I can see that, God was so close to me in that
Yeah.
season and still is.
Yeah.
And I was so fully dependent on him. So, I am
Yeah.
thankful. I'm so thankful for that season, even though it was awful.
Yeah. And I'm sure that somebody listening might find themselves, oh my goodness, I just entered this dark time, this dark place. What? Just a quick couple words. What would you say to them?
I would absolutely say something that I heard. I think it was in a sermon. Um, and I think it was the women's pastor, Amy Jo Girardi here in Nashville. And I think she said, if if anyone is trustworthy, it's God.
Mm,
We have our human trust issues with other people who have let us down and who have betrayed us. But how actually silly, if you think about it, is it for
mm,
us to think that God's not trustworthy? If
yeah.
anyone is trustworthy, it's God. And
Right.
so I actually got to write a song that I hope to put out sometime this year about um, trust from God's perspective. Like if
Mm,
if he's looking down just thinking, don't you trust me yet? The words are,
mm,
child, don't you trust me yet? Haven't I shown myself faithful? You know I never left. I walked with you every step. My word is always true. Haven't I proven I'm faithful? And I
wow.
think just holding on to those moments where you remember that God came through for you. The Israelites were always encouraged to remember their
Remember.
legacy
Yeah.
and remember their deliverance. And
Yes.
so, that's really something that I've had to continually do. Remember,
Yeah.
here I am anxious, here I am stressing again, here I am feeling like this is a never-ending tunnel with no light at the end of it. But
Yes.
without fail, whether it was the way that I wanted God to show up or not, he did show up and he did get me through those seasons. So
Mm,
I know it can be cliche, but it's all about trust and surrender. And
yeah.
I have to do that on a daily basis. Surrender is so hard for me.
It's hard for a lot of people because if I surrender, then it's going to be gone, and I'll never get whatever it is. I'll never have it again. But
Yeah, or it can feel out of control for
out of
people.
control. Yeah,
That's a
absolutely.
hard one. I love order like the next person, but sometimes we
Hmm.
don't get to order our steps.
Yeah,
Sometimes we make our
yeah.
plans and God has different plans for us. So
I think of the hymn, "Great is Thy faithfulness."
I love
Yeah,
that one.
morning by morning, His new mercies I see. And I guess I would just add a little encouragement, which kind of helped me, has helped me through different times in my life. That God has never failed me. He has gotten me to this point, and somebody needs to hear this. He will not quit now. He will
Yeah.
not leave you or forsake you. Yeah. Hey, let's talk about You'll Never Walk Alone. What a wonderful song. So many artists have recorded this song. I tried recording it one time. Could
Did you?
not could not do it justice. I did not. But I gotta tell you, in the studio, I love to sing this song, but I just have never wanted to put it out there because I just didn't. It's such a great song, and oh my goodness. Anyway, but you had a chance not just to sing it yourself, but to sing it with somebody well, that we might all know and love, right?
I think some people
Yeah,
on your show might know of her.
yeah, I'm sure. So yeah, so you recorded a duet with Dolly Parton.
That's
If
right.
you'll
Yeah.
never walk alone. Uh, so please share that story with us.
Yes. Well, I'll give you a little backstory to, it's kind of a segue from going through difficult times.
Yeah.
So this song had significance to my family because when my mom was 17, her mom was a nurse, but they
Hmm.
couldn't afford a car, and she was walking to work and she was hit and she was
Oh, no. Oh.
yeah. And so my mom was 17 and having to figure out life on her own. And
Mm.
her high school was doing Carousel the musical shortly after.
I
And
remember
so,
Carousel. Yeah.
yes. And so You'll Never Walk Alone
Was
really
from, yep.
is from Carousel, and it really touched her heart and it gave her a lot of comfort during that
Mm.
time where she was grieving the loss of her mom. And I think my grandmother also, who I'm named after, my name Demaree is it's my grand I'm Demaree Catherine, and my grandma was Catherine
Oh.
Demaree, but spelled the same way.
Oh,
So
okay. All right. Yeah.
yeah, and so she was a fan of Rodgers and Hammerstein. So that was the little backstory. And so it had actually been put on my heart to sing as a duet. And so I went to Harry Fox Agency and I licensed it so that I could do it as a duet. And
Okay.
I don't even, honest to goodness, I was visiting cousins in Salt Lake City, and that song was just put on my heart really strongly, and I had no idea why. And so I was like, I just feel like I'm supposed to do this song as a duet.
Hmm.
And so, through a series of events, shortly after I finished recording Deliver Me, which is a new single that I have out now,
Okay, right.
um, my mom met Judy Ogle through work. And Judy Ogle is the childhood best friend of Dolly Parton
Wow.
and still her best friend to this day.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. And so they just were having a conversation, and my mom mentioned that I was a singer and a songwriter because she, was asking about me and my siblings, like, oh, what do they do? And so she said, oh, does she have anything recorded that I could hear? And she said, yeah, as a matter of fact, she has one song streaming, Meet Me in This Place. And then she just finished a song, like it's not even mixed yet, but if you want to hear it. And so she played Deliver Me for her. And I think it was maybe 2 months later, they were at a birthday party, and Dolly was at the birthday party. And I guess out of nowhere, Judy just said, hey, Dolly, did you know that, Cheryl's daughter's a singer and a songwriter, and you should hear her songs?
Wow.
And thank you, Judy.
Oh,
And so I guess right then and there, Dolly sat down on a chair, and I was sitting in a cubicle at work. And I work a lot of jobs. I have a full-time office job. I teach voice lessons. I do some nannying. And this was my office job. And everybody was in a meeting. And I get this photo of Dolly sitting in a chair holding a phone. And
wow.
I said, Mom, what is that? And she said, well, don't you recognize the phone in her hand? And I looked closer, I zoomed in, and it was my mom's phone with her phone case on it that's butterflies, and that's actually Dolly's symbol.
Oh,
And
yeah,
I
all right.
said, why is she holding your phone? And she said, she's listening to your original songs.
Oh
And
my
I
word.
started crying.
I would have too.
I was like,
Wow.
"What do you mean?" I was like, "Are you being serious? Like, is this real?" And she said,
Yeah.
"Yes." And so I was grabbing tissues, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, like God, like you were so good. I can't believe that like I just followed the promptings to try to get these songs done. I had no plan for them. I just knew I
Hmm.
needed to record them and put them out because they were on my heart. I did a GoFundMe because I didn't have the budget to record anything.
Okay.
And now Dolly Parton is listening to my songs. And not only that, but she gave really beautiful feedback. And she said, particularly Deliver Me lyrics and melody just really touched her heart. And she said, I think that's a message a lot of people need to hear.
Hmm.
And she
Hmm.
said, I'm just really surprised that she's not an artist, and she just really has a gift. You need to tell her she has a gift and she
Yeah.
needs to keep going. And that was just, I mean, if the story had ended there, amazing, right?
That,
I was like on cloud nine. I'm like feather in my cap,
yeah, absolutely. Thank you,
Dolly
Lord.
Parton acknowledged me and knows I'm alive and had positive feedback. Like maybe I
Hmm.
haven't been doing this for nothing.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. There you go.
And so it felt like a little, again, a confirmation that
Confirmation.
God was giving me encouragement, like, yes, this is what I
Yep.
called you to do. Keep going.
Right.
And so this was, I think, in October. And then in December, I was at home and it was Christmas morning. And my kids were with their dad for Christmas because we alternate every other Christmas. And I had family members that had gotten the stomach flu. And so I was sitting at home alone. And I was, I had already been divorced 7 years at that point. But it never gets easier to not be with my kids.
Right.
And so I was sitting there and I was just giving my heart to God. And I said, I'm so sad. I don't want to be alone on Christmas. This is terrible. This is just like a reminder of the brokenness of my life.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I was just feeling so sad. And I was in my Christmas PJs and I had tea and I was just reading through a devotional. And I was like, God, why did you want me to be all alone today? I was like, I guess you want me to yourself. And so I was like, that's what this is about. I'm just going to focus on you. I'm going to spend quiet time with you today.
Okay.
And then my mom called and my mom said, hey, Judy's going to have a couple people over for lunch and she doesn't want you to be alone on Christmas. So if you can get ready and come over, that would be great. And I was like, absolutely. I don't want to be alone.
Yeah. Okay.
So I got dressed and I drove over and I was there for about an hour and I was talking to Judy and my mom and a couple of other people and they had some really good food. And then all of a sudden the door creaked open and I heard a giggle and I was like,
oh no.
that I know that voice. I know that giggle. I've heard it my whole life. That is Dolly Parton.
Oh,
and
my word.
So Judy let her know that I was there, and she said, "Oh, the singer and songwriter, the one whose music I listened to."
Oh, she didn't know you were going to be there?
No.
Oh, okay.
She had no idea. And so they
Wow.
made sure that it was okay that I came out. And she just gave me a hug and she said, I feel like I know you.
Wow.
And she said, I listened to your music and I just want to encourage you to keep going. Your songs really touched my heart. And, she said, a gift that good, you can't hide. And I was just like, I don't even know what my face was doing. I had no response. I was
my goodness.
speechless. But at the same time, it felt like, Aunt Dolly. Like it felt like I'd known her my whole life because you've seen her everywhere. And she was just so personable. And so she had brought orange fluff dessert that she had made for Judy as a
I love
gift.
orange fluff.
I didn't even know what it was. I'm not from the South.
My mother-in-law used to make that. Okay.
Yeah, so it's like homemade, and I was like, what a friend. She made homemade dessert to bring to her friend on Christmas morning. Like, what a treasure she is. And so she asked me, she said, when are you going to release the song? And, what are you doing with your music? And just, was just being really personable. And so I let her know, I was hoping to release Deliver Me. And then my mom walked over and she said it was just put on her heart to share with Dolly. She said, Demaree's always had this dream and vision of singing a duet with you. And I was completely silent. And she looked at me and she said, well, what song? Tell me all about it.
Let's do it.
And I said, well, I had this dream and this vision of singing You'll Never Walk Alone as a female duet, kind of an intergenerational take on it of two people coming together to encourage one another and encourage people. And, really big orchestrated strings, just very cinematic. Yeah. And she said, great. When are you going to get in the studio and start it? Sounds great. I'd love to do it.
Wow.
And I was like, no way. Even if she's being polite right now, there's no way she'll actually do this. And she did. She did. And it was such a God thing, just the way that the track came together. We got to record it Ocean Way. And again, I was the one that was going to do the budget for it. I'm asking her to do a favor to jump on the song. So I got on GoFundMe and I started raising funds. I said, I can't reveal who the person is, but it's a legend who's going to do this duet, and we're raising money for strings. And I sent her my vocals, and then she recorded her vocals at her studio. Yeah. And then we put them together, and it felt like it was just God's hand on the whole thing. And then she was so kind that she actually reached out and asked if I wanted to do a photo shoot. And so I got to go and do a photo shoot with her. That one was not photoshopped together. We got to do that live and in
Yep.
person.
Yep.
And she was, asking, how's the song coming along? How are the strings sounding? And, was just so gracious and kind and encouraging. And I mean, my life is forever changed for that opportunity to
Yeah.
just have somebody who's been in the industry so long, who is a Christian, to say, I believe you have a gift. You need to keep going with it. And not only that, I'll lend my vocals to the song in hopes that, maybe your audience will grow a little bit.
I mean, what? Wow. We talked, I mean, we've said it several times here. Talk about confirmation and encouragement. Wow.
Yeah, I think that one takes the cake
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
me.
Cake, frosting, cherry on top, you name it.
Yeah, especially because in that moment, it was really one of those lessons where it's so clear. There is nothing that I could have done to make that happen by my own might.
Yeah,
Nothing.
good
Not a
point.
thing. But what I did do, the only place I'll take credit is God put those songs on my heart, and
Mm-hmm.
I knew that I had, no matter what, to at least record those two songs. I was like,
Yeah.
I need to get this from my heart, to paper, to a recording, and get it out. And that timing worked out perfectly. Like God knew,
Yep.
and I make mistakes all the time, but I tried to be obedient with what I felt God was calling me to do in that moment and
Mm,
record those songs, which led to her being able to listen to them, and my mom being obedient about where, I can't say, but where she ended up taking a job. It was
right.
just God was orchestrating this. And I think when
Yeah.
you get to look back in retrospect and see God's handprint,
Mm-hmm.
he was working on this probably, obviously before I was even in my mother's womb.
Yep.
He knew that this day would come and he orchestrated everything. And so I just love being able to look back and see God at work long before we ever even recognized that he was at work.
I want to take this, and we've only got a few minutes left here, but I want to take this just one step farther, Demaree. This sermon we in our church recently was about the Jesus feeding the 5,000, and he's like, "Where?" And the disciples saying, "Where are we going to get enough food to feed all of these people?" And I believe it was, it was just, I think it was the disciple Andrew who said, "Well, we got a little boy here with some 5 loaves and 2 fish. Well, what's that going to do? What good is that?" And I'll fast forward here a little bit. That what we have, and the disciples and everybody thought that's not enough. That is no way what that we have, what I have in my hand, or the gift that I have, or whatever, is not enough. So why bother? Because it's not going to happen. Can we take that and just? I want to talk just for a second, you and I, to the musicians out there, the artists out there that feel like, oh, well, listen to what Demaree just shared. Wow, that is awesome, but that is never going to happen to me. But you, like you just said, you were obedient to write those songs, even though you had no idea what was going to happen to them. I think there's a lot of artists out there, Demaree, that, and maybe I felt this way myself, and I'm sure you guys listening can relate. Why bother writing that song? You don't have the resources. You don't have what it takes. You're not good enough. You're thinking all of these obstacles, and for whatever reason, that song is just, or those songs, it's never going to happen. I'm never going to get Dolly Parton to meet up with her and do, but I'm okay. I'm going to let you take it from there because you've got a unique story here to tell, and for why should your story? Let me put it this way: why should your story be unique? Why would God not make that happen for someone else? Talk about that.
Yes, please. May I be the poster child for that? I would
You
love to
may,
be.
please do.
I
I'm
am.
setting you up, girl.
Thank you. I'm 43 years old. From industry standards, I'm too old to really start a career. I still have fears about that. It's
Mm-hmm.
not like this suddenly skyrocketed me to a record deal or anything like that.
Yeah, right.
But I do feel that a calling is very different than fame.
Oh,
So
I
why
like that. Say that again.
a calling is very different than fame.
Different than fame. Yeah.
You need to honor that calling. I really think about the parable of the talents,
Oh,
of
yeah. Good one.
burying your gifts or investing on them and really multiplying. And so that's something I don't know that really got into my heart as a child, that I never wanted to waste what I felt God gave me as a gift.
Oh, that's good.
But there were plenty of times I wanted to give up.
You want to
There
give
were
up.
plenty of times that I thought, this is never going to happen for me. I still feel that way in a lot of
Okay.
ways. I'm not able to sustain myself financially as a musician,
Okay.
and that can be really discouraging. But I would say, please don't look at it through the lens of the world and
Mm,
culture. Please don't look at it from, is your voice, perfect? Is your look perfect? Is your age perfect? Is your, algorithm perfect?
yeah.
Please let go of those things. If God opens a door and you have resources to record a song, or he puts a song in your heart, please share that. That is literally a gift from God, to
Mm,
be able to share a message or share your triumph or your victory or your pain and help someone else. And the enemy wants to keep people from sharing their victory.
that's
Don't
right.
let him. Don't let him.
Mm,
Claim that victory and bring light to the dark places. Share your voice. Don't allow the enemy to silence you. And just silence him. Get rid of the voices that
right.
discourage you and give you all the reasons the world would give you of why you're not qualified. Excuse me. And even being a divorced woman, there are many people who've been completely supportive because they understand the circumstances of
Sure.
mine.
Sure.
But there are also people who would think I'm disqualified just because I am divorced without even knowing the reason.
Right.
And
Right.
so I rebuke that too. I just say,
Yep.
no, I am qualified because of who God is, not because of who I am. And
Beautiful.
I'm
Thank you.
not going to let that stop me.
Right.
I have a voice, I have a testimony,
Mm-hmm.
and God did allow those things to happen in my life. So, what am I going
Yeah.
to do with that experience? Am I going to turn from
Mm,
Him, or am I going to turn to Him? And I'm telling you now, I tried both. There was a
yeah.
moment of doubt where I was like, where are you in this? I tried it your way. It didn't work. It blew up in my face. I followed all the rules. Followed your precepts. I did everything I was supposed to do, and
Mm-hmm.
it blew up in my face. What's the point? And that was a very sad and lonely, empty place. And then I was
Oh.
able to come back into the arms of God and really just say, this is his best for me. And this
Mm,
is why he tries to protect us from things that aren't good for us. And
yeah.
don't disqualify yourself. You are uniquely qualified because God is the one that's at work. And
Right.
be obedient. Stop the sin if you're living in sin. And,
Yeah.
if you're making mistakes,
Mm-hmm.
don't
Mm-hmm.
disqualify yourself by your actions. I've had to obviously have accountability and do those things too. But
Right. Yeah.
no, don't let the enemy stop you. That would be
Right.
my
Yeah.
best advice.
In other words, guys, what Demaree is saying, what we're trying to tell you is what you have is enough. Just
Yeah.
give it to God. Give it to God completely and let Him take it from there. And you'll be amazed. And don't, Demaree, don't, would you say, don't shy away from the small things, right?
No, I think, it can be daunting, but even if you can just get a demo done,
Mm-hmm.
it just, I mean, even the iPhone sounds great. If you can have someone play guitar and just get
Right.
that out there, you never know
That's
who
right.
could hear it. And yes, use what you have. Like you said, I loved the illustration of, the little boy with the loaves
Mm-hmm.
and the fish.
Yeah. Give it to Jesus and watch what He
You
can
can do
do.
so much more with it than you could ever
Then we can ever.
think, dream, or imagine.
That's right.
I
That's
love
right.
that. I love
Uh,
that verse. And so
yeah. So we're gonna let's see. Deliver Me is coming, right? Uh,
Deliver Me is out.
Is out
Yes.
now. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
March 14th, I believe. So
I
just been
think
out.
I'm gonna double check. Make sure we've got that on Notes by Radio as well. If not, I'll let you know. But
Okay,
I know
yeah.
where to get it if we don't. I know
Yes.
I know right where to
Yes.
get it. And I know we've been playing your duet with Dolly. I know that's been
Thank
on the
you.
station. Oh yeah. And let's see what else. Hey, so real quick, let people know where they can find you and your music.
Yes, so Instagram is where I mostly like to be. It's Demaree Music, again, Demaree
Hmm.
Music. And then I have a Demaree Music Facebook page. And I have a YouTube, Demaree Music. So
Hmm.
just Demaree Music across all platforms. I don't have a TikTok, but you know.
We don't either. Don't worry about it. Oh, real quick, voiceovers. You're
Yes.
going to do some voiceovers for us, right?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Okay. Yes. Okay. I'll be getting in touch with you for that. We need some. So you're also
Love
a
that.
voiceover artist because I mean you've done Disney princesses. You can do all kinds of stuff, right?
I would love that. And I am
Yeah.
really excited to hear there's some more animation starting to be in Nashville. So
Ah, very cool. Very cool. I love the picture of you and Dolly Parton back to back.
thank
That
you.
is so cool. Guys, you got to check this out. If you're not, if you haven't been to her website yet, demareemusic.com. This is really, really cool.
And if you go to Instagram, you can see it's a really quick little behind the scenes video of the
Oh,
photo shoot, but we
oh,
do have a
sweet.
little video. Yes.
Okay, sweet. Well, I want to remind you guys once again, as I said earlier, and I got to grab my notes here if I can. There we go. Okay. Of course, you're listening to and viewing the Artist Insight podcast, one of many podcasts that we do here at Notespire Music. And this is my favorite because I get to talk to so many wonderful artists like Demaree. And this is broadcast on our station, WNSMDB, Notespire Radio, which you can hear at notespireradio.com. And we're also, if you want to do it on your phone, you just download the Live 365 app, search for Notespire, and there you are. It's broadcast Wednesday, Fridays, and Sundays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And then the podcast is also on your favorite podcast site, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Podchaser, wherever you get your podcast. Just go there and search the word Notespire, Notespire. And if you want to see our smiling faces, please check out the YouTube channel at Notespire Music TV. And you can see and view the whole thing right there. Email us at info@notespiremusic.com if you'd like to be a guest on the Artist Insight. Hey, let us know about that. We'd like to talk with you. All right, Demaree, thank you so much. This has been fun.
It has been fun. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. My heart is
Yep.
encouraged by all the things that you had to say. So
And
thank you.
you right back at you. And I know our listeners. You are going to be encouraged and blessed by your story. Thank you. Maybe down the road sometime, not too far, we'll do this and we'll catch up. And hey, maybe we'll see who else you've sung with. Who knows?
There might be another surprise coming along.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, until then, please do take care of yourself and those kids you got there. I know we said before we started recording, don't blink, but I know I don't need to remind you of that. So thank you so much. God bless you, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Okay,
Bye.
take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Notespire Radio Artist Insight. We hope you've enjoyed the program today, and join us next time when we again bring you a unique look into the lives, music, and ministries of Christian artists here on Notespire Radio.